Yeah, it was interesting because I went to this inter-intellect session around, I think it's called book therapy or something, where you talk
Right.
about like your life and what you do, and people recommend books for you. And so they were asking me what books I liked, and I was like, "Oh, this book." It was like Loveless by, and it was like fiction and non-fiction. And I went, an introduction to ecological psychology, and everyone's face went, "What?"
That's not a book you sort of just pull out of a hat. That's one you've got to prep for. You got to build.
Yeah, you can tell I prepped so well for it because like, what's that? I'm like, oh shit.
Exactly.
I literally turned around and went, there could be an entire salon dedicated to just that question.
Yeah. Like, here's another book related to it. Here's another book related to
Yeah, I know. And I was like, cool. I'm not going to do this justice, caveat.
big caveat right here. Listen to
I am
podcast.
I am oversimplifying everything. And one of the quick questions was, what have you got any resources on this? I'm like, okay, mini podcast episode of ours. Here's the actual two books. And someone mentioned they liked the source material. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me throw Perception and Action, JJ Gibson's book at you as well. And they're like, yes, I love this. It was great. One of the questions that was asked to me was, did you as a recommendation, do you want like academic papers as example, as like recommendations? I'm like, yes. Yes,
Wait, so
please.
did you give them an assignment to look at the book then?
Well, the base. No, it was just a casual conversation. It's like because the people who were there wanted to know more and was asking about ecological psychology and wanted like ideas of like where
Right.
to look, what to learn. So I sent them the bonus episode we did.
What with Julia and Thingy or the
I did
summary?
both the summary one and
Yeah.
the one with Julia. I also shared both the
Jeffrey,
books.
that's the other name.
Jeffrey, yeah, Julia and Jeffrey. I shared both of those books. I can't remember, and that was it. Yeah, I just shared those as a good starting point. It was only later that I realized, crap, you shared like some really good resources I could have shared as well, which I remembered today as I was setting up Substack.
Well, oh, we could get onto that one. Well, very quickly, I guess the plan for 2024, very briefly, do more of what I did. Like I don't do the whole New Year's resolution stuff. It's like I'm gonna continue doing my thing. Uh,
Did you see I put something in there this time?
oh, and the event thing.
Yeah, see me, look at me. I actually did something.
Oh yeah, so you did. No, I was planning lots of other bits and bobs. Um, because some of my videos on the I don't want to call it a second channel, on my educational science channel, um, have garnered a lot of attention, which obviously is a good thing, but it means there's lots of comments. I will probably rant later about some of the things, but related to your eco psych, I had some comments on that video, and that video typically isn't one that does well because it's an ecological psychology explanation of J.J. Gibson. So at like 40 seconds in, we're talking heavy philosophy. Uh, but I got a comment about the video, and it's made me want to do a proper deep dive video because I've always shied away from doing the longer video essays because one, they're freaking long. Some of them
Yeah.
are like 4 hours long, and obviously that's a lot of research, that's a lot of work. Um, but it allows me to add nuance and context and caveats, and I can treat it like you want to know? Here's 2 hours me talking about the thing with all researchy stuff, rather than me sort of riffing off of context. And I feel like that's going to be a video that happens in 2024. So when you get that question of, do you have a resource? You can say, well, I have I don't know how long the video essay would be, but probably like 2 hours. 2 hours worth of video plus all the sources that he's going to put in. And considering I have like 30 sources for like it's basically a source per minute, I think is my rough average.
Oh
So
dear.
so yeah.
Oh, fun.
Um, so the Ofsted video that's coming out later today, it's scheduled in. It's a 32-minute video, just about. I have 32 references plus like 7 others that I haven't put in the video, but they're related to the conversation. Because I didn't want to have like this and this and this and this all said this point, like you do in academics. I'm like, I'll just put the main one and then put the others in the other section. But yeah, so that's like a reference a minute plus others.
Oh my god, have that's gonna
Yeah.
be one heck of a video.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the video I'm doing at the moment on the PISA report, I thought, oh yeah, let's do a video on the PISA report that came out for 2023. Yeah, I'm on volume 1 is 500 pages long, like the actual report.
I have seen your Twitter going, oh,
Yeah,
shit. Why did I do this to myself?
pretty much. I mean, the introduction was 15 minutes. The end of the introduction section to the video is 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, I've tried to keep it shorter than an hour, but I'm not sure because I still have sections on safety curriculum, teachers, English, like the English system, the US system, the Australia system, the Canada system, and then the top 4 systems, like the main points of those systems to do, as well as a conclusion. And I've already done performance, investment, equity, technology, time in school, and then volume 1 explanation plus the OECD compass. So it's long,
Yeah.
but it's fun. Oh, yeah, it's fun for me. Like, we'll get to your Substack in a second because I feel like it's going to relate to what I'm going to discuss now. But I was watching Ali Abdal's appendix live stream post video thing this morning because it appeared on my YouTube feed and I just pushed it while I was listening to like get up. Yeah, so I want to listen to something. So I pushed the button and I played. And about 15 minutes into this 25-minute thing, he said what a lot of creators say. He's at a point where he doesn't know what videos to make because he's at a point where he's not quite the same as his main audience because he's no longer a student and a lot of his audience are students. He's also doing stuff that's different. Like he's just written this book on productivity, which I have thoughts on. Um, and he doesn't want to make more productivity videos because he's been drowned in this thing for so long. So he basically asked the question that he asks everyone in the book, like, how do I keep this stuff fun and joyful? And he cites an episode by David Perel and someone else saying that the writing you do that's fun is more engaging because you have expertise in that topic and you can play with the words. And that's what he's struggling with because his area has always been productivity. And since diving into research for the book, he's now struggling as to what video topics to write about, to talk about, and those sorts of things, which is where, for me, the Educational Science YouTube channel is my research. And because I'm not narrow-minded, because ecological psychology isn't... I know you're laughing.
Sorry. The way you said, to clarify, are you calling Ali Abdul narrow-minded? Because that was my instant reaction when you said that. I'm like, wow, 2024.
Machine gun. Yes.
Okay, cool. I thought that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
I wanted to confirm.
I guess to add confirmation, the content he makes for the main channel is narrow-minded because it's all productivity. Like it's all this one thing. And I don't think he would disagree with that. This right here is where, for me, I would say that's open communication. That's me not sitting on eggshells, not hiding behind, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm just saying it as it is. And Ali mentioned on a conversation with Tiago Forte that over communication is something he wants in his business, in his company, and other things that he's tried to emphasize in social communication online, which I find mildly ironic because Tiago obviously over communicates some of his thoughts a bit prematurely, I would argue, making claims that are a bit outlandish, but it's communication nonetheless. And I would say that he, as in Ali, his content on his main channel is narrow-minded because it's all about this one thing, which I think is one of the reasons he's struggling now with the content, because it's like, I've spoken about this thing for X amount of time, I've done lots of research on it, and now he's just repeating content. Same with me with the Notion stuff. I ended up repeating stuff. But
Yeah.
I could argue it's the same with me now with the Obsidian stuff, even though Obsidian is how I research. So it's not necessarily, hey, here's a new plugin. It's this is how I'm doing the research with Obsidian now. And going back to your Substack stuff, I'd be curious to know how you're approaching that content, because for me, educational science is basically social science directed towards the education sector. So I could talk about anything as long as it relates to the education sector, which is basically anything.
Yeah, so moving on to the Substack, it's kind of so I created content. Everybody pass out. I know.
Did you publish
Not the
it?
video I said I'd create, but that's fine. Because suddenly I decided, oh, I have a whole new campaign starting in January in the world that I created. I need to get this shit together so I can actually get it done. So I now have Obsidian Publish. Thank you very much, Obsidian Publish. Very nice. And I've now created a whole vault just for Selendorus, and I've set that up so that it's like ready to be used by other players. So yay. Cool side note, we can probably go there as well, I'm sure. Thank you, metadata menu, because I just love you.
Oh, have you
Um,
seen the updates?
yeah. Yes, I haven't touched them yet because if I touch them, I'm going to change that vault. So I'm like, nope, until this video is done, I will not change the vault. Because once I do start playing with that, I'm like, I can't stand how I could make it look like this because I know it can look like this. I cannot just leave it static. Yeah. So I'm just like, no,
Constraints.
constraints, because otherwise I will never get that video done. It's hard enough to get the video done because I'm already because it's such an evolving process with it. And like every single time I go back and I run a new session and I run something new, I'm like, ah, cool, this is better. Okay, cool. This is the way I actually work. Well, better's the wrong word, but
This is
like
literally my YouTube channel.
I don't know.
Oh, I've done a video. Oh, I want to do another one now because I changed it. I want to do another one now because I changed it. Insert like the last, like 2023, basically.
Yeah. It's very difficult, and I don't know whether I want to be doing that. That's my question, which I'm kind of working on at the moment. However, I decided to create an email and send it. Started writing it. It was about the new year because
I saw it.
in this world, the moment New Year appears, I just sit there and I kind of just crease into an old hag because I'm just like
Older.
so annoyed. I have a
Yeah.
visceral reaction to the new year. And so I was like, okay, cool, let me write something. And so I started writing something. And then it got longer. 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 I think I ended just over. I think I put it in the post because I was like, I could talk even more. And there were so many things that I was just like, okay, cool, no. Because this is an email, and I'm not exactly the biggest fan of really, really stupid long emails.
That's
And
why I
there were
stopped
so
writing.
many. Huh?
That's why I stopped writing them because they just got longer and longer. It's like I can't justify this being a Substack letter thing, but I want to do it. Hence the
And then
video
I'm just
essays.
like, fine, I'm gonna start a Substack to start talking about it. And I have literally just set it up this morning. And it's literally called the Related Rabbit Hole. Because then it gives me that freedom to go because I tried very hard to stay within the boundaries of like the related rabbit hole for that email, which was the fertile void. And I'm like, nope, nope, this is not going to happen. So I got to talk about this, and then talk about this, and then I could reference it to this, and then I could relate it. And I was just like, nope, nope, nope. There's so much context missing from this email that I want to provide. But the more I kept going, the more I was getting away from my original point. And I'm like, okay, fine. I think this is time to move this from here and then off. So it allows me to explore things that don't have a simple business, like an easy link to business, but also because emergence, as I do this, like create the related rabbit holes, I will always find something that goes, oh, cool, this links to that. So I can literally say in a much shorter email, here's a thing, here's how I feel about it. Want to dive deeper? Come here, find out, learn more, discover more. So I can have context specific stuff. I think I still will mention business because it's something that I care about,
Okay.
but it won't be, the focus won't be let us create content to sell my business. It will be let us create content from an act of exploring and finding stuff. So I can talk about D&D, how I'm running my D&D stuff, how I'm thinking about D&D, like using an ecological approach to D&D, which is really fascinating because I'm like, okay, cool. Now I'm starting to realize exactly how I run my games. And D&D feels very much a delightful explanation of ecological psychology. So that's kind of coming soon as I'm kind of wrapping my head around it. I'm like, yes, I could explain that in D&D. Let's go.
Yeah, see, that's where I feel that the actions that we take in the new year, I don't think are different from the actions we took
No,
before the new year. When you
no.
talk about starting and wanting to write this big long thing, that's where I sit here and go, add constraints. Once you've added constraints, then you have started acting, perceiving and acting together, and new pieces of information, new pieces of content, new projects can emerge with the writing process. So the first video, the first article, the first blog, whatever that you write will be oversimplified and will lack lots of context because you haven't got other content to relate it to yet, which is the starting point that I was at with the channel. The first couple of videos didn't have really any context. When new viewers on YouTube go to the channel, they just see this one video like, okay, so what? But as soon as there's 4 or 5, they like, okay, now I can see a trend. Now I can see something I can latch onto. I like those couple of videos, or I like those couple of videos. And with your Substack, I imagine it's going to be the same sorts of thing. When you're writing, you can say, oh, that relates to this article I wrote, or that article I wrote, which is where
Yeah.
you start building out the themes and the trends of what it is you're writing about. So even though it is still a rabbit hole of here's loads of stuff, there are
There is
there are
something that
underlying threads.
together. Yeah, absolutely. And that gives me that also by calling it the related rabbit hole, I am not constraining myself too much to a point where I don't produce, where I don't start. Because that's also the risk that I have. It's like, okay, cool, this is just about this. Oh, but this isn't directly linked to this. Of course, it's related underneath, but I can't make the link really obvious, so I won't do it, which is exactly what constrained me with my emails.
So I'm going to ask you a really triggering question now.
I love it. Oh, I've so missed this.
What are your SMART goals for the
Oh,
Substack?
piss off. Piss off. I hate that stupid. I'm probably going to write something about that as well because I just hate that. It just makes me annoyed. Just
Okay, so I'll reframe it in a way that made it maybe a little bit more related to our conversation. Open goals. What are your open goals about the Substack?
to write shit.
Yeah, sounds good. Do you have any specific time frames in there?
I
Are you adding any constraints or?
I'm not sure yet. At the moment, the goal is to write shit because I have been in this kind of fertile void, to use that phrase, for the last number of months, and so much is going on in like what I'm doing and how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling, and a lot has changed. So I'm like, okay, cool, let's start exploring these topics. Let's like not even refocus my attention. Refocus.
Refocus, reattune, same sorts of meanings. Yeah.
Reattune, like those same words. Because a lot of what I spent the last half of the year doing was very much on the social element because that's what was needed at that time. And now I have that, and I'm beginning to feel more, stable in that. I am ready to just keep that going, just let sustain it, and shift my focus back into my work, the stuff that I'm interested in, which is the stuff to do with EdPsych and the fertile void and the
Ed
coaching.
Psych or Eco Psych?
Eco psych, not ed
You
psych.
you
No.
said Ed for ecological dynamics and then just merged it with Psych, didn't
Yeah,
you?
yeah, because that's how I'm fit. Yeah, lots of the eco psych stuff and then the coaching stuff because that's actually what I'm interested in and exploring coaching because yes, I could do tech stuff and it's boring and boring. But I now have that creative outlet that I needed so that if needs be, I can just do tech stuff because I have a creative outlet that I enjoy. And then on top of that, I then have the writing creative outlet that I want to have too. So I have two forms of, well, not two forms, they're the same thing, but I've realized as I've been writing stuff for San Andorras, the word that I've created, I love writing. So I'm like, all right, cool. I write more now.
Yep.
That's what I feel like doing.
Do you have have you selected a time or are you just telling yourself, I'm gonna write at some point today? Like with the Seth Godin's story about brushing his teeth, I made a decision once to brush my teeth every day. I now do it. And then obviously he did it with his blog. I decided to write a blog every day. Now I do it. Is it the same sort of thing for you? I've decided to write every week and now I'm going to do
Yeah,
it. Or
yeah, it's very much like, okay, cool, I'm gonna write every week. Let's just go. And I'm starting it week because otherwise I know what I'll do.
yeah, it's when I say write, I'm not saying I'm going to publish something every week. It's just I'm going to write something.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of been what I want to do is just start writing because I really enjoyed writing the email that I wrote. So I'm probably going to tweak that slightly and publish that as well as an article because it wouldn't take very much to change into that. And it'd be a good article for the first part of the year. And I
Hmm.
realized so much of what I like to write doesn't fit in to a business, weekly email. The fact
Yeah.
that you read it proves my point.
I read part of it. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't read all of it because I don't read many emails, but I did it was one that I actually clicked on and I skim read through. So
Precisely. The fact that you even skim read through it was quite like, oh, cool, you actually skim read it. Wow, good. And
yeah,
and
I
that's
remember seeing it in my inbox and thinking, John, what are you doing, John? Maybe it was out of curiosity for what you're planning on doing in 2024. But yeah, massive side tangent, as you would expect. I got called an AI.
what?
I was accused of being an AI robot. I was reading through the comments in the of one of the educational science videos, and they said to everyone, like, just sort of like blanket statement, don't trust this new YouTube channel. They are an AI bot that's been programmed to write as with a British accent. I'm like English accent, excuse me, British accent to make themselves sound smarter than they am. And I good luck finding the comment. It's on one of the videos that's got like 400 plus comments. Yes, I have responded, or I've hearted every comment. um, but yeah, so I kindly responded to them. I do add comments, like actually respond to some of the comments, and I said, if you look at the end of the video, you can see my AI face. It's like, before you make a comment, why don't you actually watch the freaking video? I tweeted about something just before we started this conversation as well. People are asking me questions that you could literally just go on any internet browser, type the question in, and find an answer. I'm not going to
I
sit
didn't
here and
really do that.
I'm not going to sit here and answer your question on my YouTube video. If you can just internet search it yourself, I'm not spending that time doing it. Do it yourself, you lazy.
I
Yeah.
kid you not. I obviously messaged you yesterday evening, late evening, saying, "Are we doing a recording tomorrow?" I actually was about to send like 3 or 4 hours earlier because I was fiddling around with Publish, and I was like, "How do I do this? Like, why is this not do? Why am I? Why is it?" So I was going to send you a question, and I'm like, "Hang on a minute, I could actually just figure this out by looking at the Publish because publishing in Obsidian is a bit like it's weird."
Yeah, I think it's weird because it's obviously local and then it's local going to cloud.
Mm. It's a bit weird. So I was
What
like,
bit were you struggling with? Obviously, I'm very familiar with it, so
I figured it out. It was literally something so stupidly stupid that I was like, this is so simple, and I should be able to figure this out. And it was literally, how do I send it to a specific homepage? Like, choose a file to take it to a homepage. But you
mhm.
have to go into the settings and then scroll down through loads of stuff and then be like, ah, cool, there it is.
Yeah,
And I was like, that is the most simplest. Okay, cool. Well, how about I actually, think instead of just like,
exactly. And that's the thing that I tweet about. Like commenters, please just think a little bit more before you actually comment, which relates to so many of the other responses that I get on YouTube when I'm discussing things on YouTube. The responders don't actually acknowledge the words I've written. And even in the video that I have that's doing quite well at the moment about Johnny Harris and journalistic integrity, people are commenting about my bias. And what's mildly ironic is that they think I am biased against Johnny Harris. They think I don't like Johnny Harris. Uh, because I'm saying that he's wrong, which he was wrong, he's made mistakes, and that he has faulty journalistic integrity, which he does, which was the point of the video. But the commenters are arguing that I am biased against Johnny Harris and it leaves a bad taste in their mouth. And that is one, ironic because I actually enjoy his videos. I watch all of his videos, like every minute of every video. I go through all of the sources and I use his videos as sources for other information that I'm going to use. The point of my video was that his sources are inaccurate sometimes. The information he shares in the video doesn't match up the sources, which again isn't good integrity, journalistic integrity. And some of the quality of his sources are also quite poor. So I'm asking him to improve his videos, so it means I have to do less when I watch his videos. So if anything, I'm trying to help him, not be like, oh no, he's bad, don't listen to, don't what, no. But because of the tone of the video, the individuals are perceiving, because it's a critique video, because I'm critiquing his points, they're like, oh no, no, this is bad. Why are you going against him? I'm like, I'm not going against him. It's a critique. That's what academics do. That's what people with digital literacy do. That's what you do when you're reading. You critique, you look at different sources. And going through the PISA report, I find it really interesting that the OECD countries are trying to encourage these sorts of skills, these journalistic, academic reading, writing skills, scientific troubleshooting skills. And I'm sitting here as this academic person putting out this video, and people are going, "Oh no, you're biased." I'm like, well, one, I'm human. Of course I'm biased. But two, why don't you actually listen to the words and interpret the words for what they are? Yes, I have tonality on those words to shape my interpretation of what that means. But that doesn't mean you have to do the same thing. You could listen to my words and go, no, I disagree. And if you do disagree, please tell me why you disagree. Unfortunately, I haven't had many of those comments because people don't seem to disagree. They just disagree with the way that I've presented the information, which is literally the point of the video. But that's besides the point. It's like, actually look at the words being said or the information being shared, not how it's being shared, because that's presentation which you can fluff up and do in any way you want, which is the whole point of Johnny's videos. They are more fluffed up than mine, which is why they get more views. It's the presentation. And oh, I could talk about it for a long time, but like boiling it down, people, I think, when it comes to digital literacy moving into 2024, they need to develop those skills quick with AI, with information online, with YouTube videos, with Substacks. We need a way of sifting through that information. And to me, looking from an eco-psych perspective, how does the creator and the audience both try and create a system where it's easier for people to figure out what is true in speech, quote marks, air thingies, um, and what isn't. And the easiest way for me to do that as a creator, add sources so people can find it on their own, show what it is that I'm talking about so people can see it themselves. And when I put sources in videos, make sure I'm expressing my interpretation on it. Once I've done that, I've added in as much information as I can, but
Mm.
now it's down to the audience member to do their work. If one of those people in that communication doesn't do the work, there's going to be misinformation. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, it's the creator side. They don't put sources in. So the audience can't do their due diligence unless they have the time to do all of the work the creator hasn't done and then do their own side as the audience. Which, yeah, that's me. I'm the one that goes into the sources and says that. But most people won't do that, which is where the creators need to have integrity, which is the whole point of the video. And I'm curious how you're going to do that with your Substack.
It's I was thinking about that as well, because a lot of it will be opinion,
Uh-huh.
but there is. So I'm trying. I'm figuring it out now as we speak. I think there will be sources because then people can go back to the original source. So even with that post that I wrote, that email that I wrote, there was the source of the Fertile Void, which was a book that I read, which I could go back. I was thinking about this because one of the things I'm thinking of writing about is like neurodiversity myself, from someone who does identify with that label. So I'm like, oh, that'd be interesting. However, it's complicated and not as simple as this. How would I talk about that? Okay, cool. I would have to get some references. Cool. And then I thought of a book, and then I'm like, yeah, that book's very opinionated. I wonder if they've got references so I can go. And it's like always going back to the source.
Original
Some
source,
of
yeah.
the, yeah, like finding the original source and going back to the original source. And that was something that I got from like the intellect thing that I went to. Is like always going back to the source. I think that's where I'm going to start. And
Mm.
it will obviously change and grow and evolve. And I will just always go back to the source and provide a link to the source. How easy that's
That's
going to be in Substack, I have no clue.
but that's the thing, and that's where I would love to see the academic spirit, I guess you could say, put into online creation. Yes, academia has a lot of limitations, a lot of problems, and I've talked about them as well. There's a video all about it. It's doing quite well. People don't seem to. That's another. I'll get to that. But when it comes to sourcing information, you can be wrong. You can be completely wrong, and someone can have a completely different opinion to you. But if you put the source in there, they can work it out on their own. They can figure that out. And if their interpretation of whatever you've said is different, they can go find it. They can get their own interpretation of it. Then they come back to you and say, nah, you're wrong because of this, this, and this, which is a good thing. it's
I also that's kind of one of the things I've always struggled with when it comes to creating content is not necessarily being wrong. I'm not sure whether that's the problem. I think it's being misunderstood, perhaps, or like giving an no. I think the problem was giving an opinion because there are a lot of opinions on the internet. And do I really want to put my opinion across? Well, yes, because for some reason people find what I say interesting, which I don't fully understand. But
everyone finds other people's opinions
oh yeah,
interesting because they're always going to have different context to their
yeah,
own.
yeah. And so that was the thing. I'm like, okay, cool, fine. I can give my opinions, but how do I? One of the questions that I had was how do I give people the opportunity to
Can I poke
create
you a bit?
their oh, you can poke me all you like. That sounds really disgusting. But yeah,
It's going to say careful. Um, I this is just a guess because this is what I feel.
yeah.
You're looking for an opinion that's safe.
Yes, I think that's what it is. It's very much looking for a safe opinion, which I'm kind of getting a tiny bit tired of doing because I
And
think I have pokey
that
opinions.
right there is the annoyance.
Yeah, and I think that is it. I'm trying to find a safe opinion. Whereas I think for me, something that I was just thinking as you were talking was like, if I give sources, it's not going to change anything at all. People will still not like what I say and will still not like, but I have done my due diligence to go, okay, cool. If you disagree, which I hope you do, because that's more interesting, here are sources. Like, here is like having evidence of my opinions, evidenced opinion.
Yeah, formulated opinion. This is
Yes.
where I come back to the GCSE maths stuff. I find it really funny how a lot of people in maths, when they were doing their tests for the papers, they'd say, "Oh, I've got the answer," but they never showed the working. And yeah, if you don't show your working, you don't like the examiner doesn't know the logic at which that you followed to get the answer. And I think it's the same as sharing opinions online. You share an opinion, great, but what's your logic in getting there? How did
Mm,
you come to this conclusion? How did you get to this perspective? And when you can see other people's logic, you can then, if you do disagree, find where you actually disagree. Because with a lot of people online, they'll say, "Oh, I disagree with you. Fundamentally disagree." No, you don't fundamentally disagree with that person because I would imagine your ethics and morals are probably very similar because you're doing similar things online. Where you differ is probably a nuance, context shift, change, perspective, interpretation that you've gone one direction, they've gone another direction. And finding that can only be done when you know the logic of the information being shared, which has to be done either through sources or through a really long explanation, which is where like the 3 hour long video essays come because they give you 10 minutes worth of context before they make an opinion, which is one way of doing it. I prefer giving a source because then people can come up with their own, especially when you give explanations, because within the explanation, you then need to give further explanation.
on your
It just
explanation, explain the
snowballs.
explanation, explanation of the thing that you're explaining.
Exactly. And it just
I,
snowballs.
it was really interesting because I did something differently with the thing that I wrote, and I wanted to provide context, which is kind of important. And so from the article that I wrote, I actually just spoke about me, which egotistical slightly, but it's the only experience that I have, and it's the only context I have from which I'm writing. So that's the way it needs to be. And it was
Mhm.
very interesting to write it from that like perspective of my own, which whilst also talking about a sciencey topic. And it was really interesting because it added that context and it became easier to complete. Like halfway through writing that, I was like, I feel a bit stuck. I don't know where to go next. So I went to ChatGPT, looked at that, and went, "No, you missed the damn point." And then went back to writing it myself.
Yeah,
I think I used a tiny section just to push me forward.
that's
And then
exactly why I don't like AI.
yeah, that's exactly I'm just like, okay, no, no, it's just annoying me now.
Mm. I've when it comes to the packaging of the
Oh,
content, yeah, I know. I have been called out for using big YouTubers to get views, and
yeah, duh.
yeah, duh. Like, if I look at the videos that have done well on the Educational Science channel so far, the Johnny Harris one with the Johnny Harris in the title and the thumbnail, the Francesca Gino one with Harvard University in the thumbnail, and Francesca Gino as a leading behavioral scientist, high profile. And then the Veritasium one is also now doing well because you've got Derek Muller on the thumbnail with Veritasium in the title, and people are saying you're using it to get views. Well, the other videos that talk about similar topics have a phone on the thumbnail. It's got like 900 views. Has James Gibson on the thumbnail, a dead academic that talks about a topic that is hardly spoken about inside scientific literature. That's got about 1,000 views as well. And then another video about the school education system, the history of the Prussian education system, again, with a guy that's famous in history, but not on YouTube, that's got like 1,000 views. So if I want to get people interested in a topic that is arguably bland, you've got to bring some interest in there. And the only way to do that on YouTube is to give something people are familiar with, whether it's a story they're familiar with, a person they're familiar with, an idea they're familiar with. You can't go in saying, "Hey, I'm an expert in this thing. If you're not an expert, don't watch the video," because then you won't get views. That's what academics do all the time.
I think that is going to be the hardest one. So I want to write stuff, but then is there a point to writing stuff if no one will read it? And then I'm like, yeah, because I think I'm starting from writing for my own sake versus writing for an audience as such. Yes, it would be nice to get responses and replies. Absolutely. But I am also partly writing for myself. I feel a pokey question coming.
Yeah.
There's a huge pause, and I'm like, oh, here it comes. Here we go.
It's my face. I'm really good at hiding my thoughts.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, sarcastic. Well, we are embedded, embodied, cognitive beings.
Oh
So,
yeah.
uh, anyway, when it comes to the content I create in educational science on that channel, I don't know how much of the content you've watched. Do you think I'm writing for an audience? Obviously, me asking the question predisposes the answer, but does it come across as I'm writing for an audience?
Not really. Well, no. The thumbnail and title is to get people in, but that's it. Like the content itself doesn't feel like it's being written for an audience. It feels more like I'm exploring this thing. It's interesting.
So how would you say, obviously you don't know exactly how I write. How would you say that I write it? Like, how do I decide what goes first, what goes second, what goes in there, what doesn't go in there? How do you think I make those decisions if I'm, quote, not writing for an audience?
Is what you're interested in, I would assume.
But how do I choose what goes first? The most
I
interesting thing at the start?
don't know. Yeah, probably the thing that you find most interesting at the beginning, and then perhaps you do a little bit of like YouTubey. You no, you don't do YouTube things. I don't know is the answer to that question, or I'm not sure.
Because that's the sort
Like,
of question that I think you would need to answer for yourself. Because
mm,
when you say I might be writing for an audience, I might not. I don't think it matters whether you think you're writing for an audience or whether you're not. When you're writing for someone to read it, whether that's you or whether that's other people, you're writing for someone to read it. That's the whole point of writing, to communicate ideas. So
mm,
when I think about the decisions I make, I know why I make those decisions in the scripts that I'm writing. For you, you're going to need to understand those questions for yourself when you're writing.
mm, that'll be fun.
So the way that I write the scripts is I write to my future self. Like, I know I'm interested in the thing right now, but in 2 months' time, I might not be as interested, and I will have forgotten things because if you don't use it, you lose it. So I write it as if I was going to tell my future self about this project that I did.
Oh,
That's how I write the scripts. And I, this is a limitation on my part. I know what I know, obviously. So I know what I'm familiar with, which means what I've done in previous videos, because I'm writing for myself, is I've excluded things I know I'm very familiar with, which does lead to misinterpretations of information, which is one of the critiques, the main critiques about the Johnny Harris video, is I did that video talking to myself. So there are assumptions and pieces of information. Well, there are lots of assumptions in that video that if you're not familiar with the content, if you're not familiar with the landscape, if you're not familiar with my own experiences, then you could take a different view on things.
mm,
But that's a limitation that I'm moving forward to change. But I needed to get the video out to start with, so I just wrote to myself, and that's what I'm going to do. Now with that reframing, I can reframe it and say, okay, I'm going to write to myself, but get rid of these assumptions.
mm, yeah.
So that's how I approach it. Maybe you want to approach it in the same sorts of way. This is what I was interested in while I was writing. These are the things I needed to know. Like I start the video about the state of education in 2023, this long video I'm scripting, by explaining what PISA is and what the OECD is. Because I know in a few months' time, if I haven't been looking at it, I'm probably going to forget what PISA stands for and what OECD stands for. I can't even remember what OECD stands for now, and I'm writing the script. What does it stand for? It's Cooperation Economic something. Yeah, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. That's the other word, development. Yeah, but it's at the start of the video, so I know what it is.
Yeah. I there is one thing that I kind of have decided as I'm writing is often one of the biggest criticism, which I take great pride in, of my content is I don't write it like I'm writing something. I write it as a conversation with myself as I'm writing it. And I'll be intrigued to see whether that changes as I continue.
I imagine the critique is related to the fluff added to the content.
Possible. People just like it just sounds like you just the critique that I got was it just sounds like you're talking to yourself as you're writing or something along those lines.
Mm.
And I'm like, yes.
Everyone does. That's how we write.
I'm like,
I
yes. I'll be intrigued to see how much like what my decisions are as I continue. Because I'm not a concise writer.
Well, you'll only know when you actually continue writing.
Yeah.
Like, just do it. The Nike
Yeah,
slogan.
that's exactly my point. I'm just like I'm just gonna start writing big and not necessarily think too much because otherwise I would just write myself out of it.
I mean, that's what the Substack was. For me, Substack was a trigger for me to write more because before the Substack, I was writing in my Obsidian, but it wasn't collected writing. It was lots of points, highlights, notes, ideas, and very sporadic thoughts. Substack was my stepping stone at getting me to a point where I was writing longer-ish scripts. I mean, the when you look at the Educational Science channel, the scripts that I wrote, I think the first one's 3, 4 minutes long, then it's like 6 minutes, then 8 minutes. I'm writing the Ofsted one that goes out today is half an hour long. That's a lot of words. And then this piece of script again is long, and the video after this, I know is also going to be long. And the other videos I have planned are definitely not short. Let's put it that way. But it's a stepping
I could
stone.
imagine.
It's a stepping stone. I mean, I have a video put in. I don't think it is a video. I put it in as a video, education science in a nutshell. Um, but it's basically
2 hour long.
way longer than that. I mean, when I look at the file, it has a lot of headings. Let me quickly count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 22 headings. And I mean, those headings are very broad. So psychology, cognitive psychology, cognition, thinking, perception, memory, linguistics, reasoning is one
Yeah.
thread.
Okay, fine. 5 hour.
I feel like it's going to be more like a book.
Yes.
But because some of the videos that I'm doing now are in that video. So I know I'm going to reference them. So it's like, how much of that video is going to be in this video, which is how you then expand from I started writing a 3 minute video to I'm now writing a 10-hour long documentary book project thing. Like, it's huge.
With that book, how is your book going?
I
How
assume you're
many-
talking about the fantasy book.
Yes.
I've written it, so I have a finished draft script,
Nice.
but it's it's on pause because my interest is in this research. And I was doing it like side by side. I was doing the
Yeah.
Obsidian channel. I had all the different projects and stuff going on, but because I'm just going to be honest. The videos on the Educational Science channel are doing well, so I want to put more time in
Yeah.
those videos.
Mm,
Like, um,
makes sense.
yeah. So yes, it's financially related because I get more money if I get more views. So yeah, money is involved. I'm not going to be like beating around the bush. Yeah, I get more money from it. Great. But it's a paused project basically.
Cool.
But
It
I
was
have
interesting because I started reading something, well, listening, Audible, because San Andreas, which is the one I'm creating, is very like Irish, Celtic inspired, very high fantasy, like fae creatures, and I was looking for some research, obviously, like some books, and I found one book, and I searched for that book, And then I saw a markdown file. I'm like, well, I don't have that markdown. It was actually from when we had the synced vault, and it's the same book. And you had it in your book vault thing. And I'm like,
Right.
oh,
What's the book
that's
called?
I think it's called, hang on, I need to look because I can't remember right
So
now.
you did research and you found the same research I found.
Yeah, I found the same when I say research, I mean research into fantasy.
Oh yeah.
Um, The Cruel Prince.
Oh yes.
I was like, because it's very Fey, you're
Mm.
literally in the Feylands. So I was like, cool, all right, I'll look at that. And then and then I saw it and I searched it on my phone because it was very late at night that I was starting to think about that. And then I saw a note. I was like, what the hell? That's not my note. I don't have that note in there. Opened it, it was from your vault, and I'm like, that's weird. Right, cool, that pretty much. Cool, I'll listen to that now. And so I have
Yeah.
that series
Yeah,
in the past.
my fantasy reading sort of stuff, it's not gone, but it's sort of in the background. I sort of just
Yeah.
doing it as I go. But I've written the story. Like I know the story. I know the storyline. I know what happens. So I'm happy that it's done. And if I want to publish it, I will then revisit and probably rewrite it.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so it's not an unfinished project, but it's not finished either.
Mm.
Um, but because of the Educational Science channel, I have a feeling this educational science in a nutshell, this I don't think it's a video. I think that would be a book. Like I can quite vividly envisage 2025 at the start of 2025 once I've done a lot of the video essays because I mean I plan on doing a video every 2 weeks ish. So you're looking at like 20 videos, 20 video essays about topics related to educational science. I feel that at the start of 2025, I could put a lot of that information into a book.
Mm.
So those interested in following the science, following the research, following the ideas would get that. And when I think about the videos that I know I'm planning on doing, such as putting these two books from Rob Gray, what learning to optimize movement and how we learn to move. I'm looking at putting those two books into a video, maybe two videos, probably one. Uh, and then the Ecological Psychology book as well, Introduction to Ecological Psychology into a video, then Cognitive Psychology into videos. I essentially have two different academic books, like textbooks, on a YouTube channel in videos, summarized through a YouTuber's lens, I guess you could say,
Mm.
with two other related books applying the theory to practice, alongside all of my personal experience and other related research and practical policies in educational systems, such as PISA and Ofsted and everything else. If I was to put all of that into a book, I feel like that would be valuable, beneficial, and a good use of my time, and I can see that, which is hard for some people to do when they're writing a book. They start a book and like, I don't really know what I'm writing. And that's how I felt with some of the other books that I started. I mean, even with the fantasy book, I started like, I don't know, it's going to be some wizardy, witchy, magical thing with creaturey stuff. Like, I started with no idea what I was writing, and the first couple of chapters show that because I'm literally all over the place. But with this project. I don't want to call it a book because I don't think it is a book yet. But if the channel continues with all the video essays and with the research, and if other people are interested and they show their interest in it, I know I'm interested in it. Then it could become a book. Educational science in a nutshell. There you go.
Sounds cool.
But yeah, so that's where the book journey is going. But yeah, really not sure what's going to happen in 2024 when it comes to all of this sort of stuff because again it's a dynamical system. There's a quote that's from the PISA report. It's page like 370 something. But they were talking. This sounds really weird, doesn't it? It's page 370 something of this article that I just happened to be reading. But they were talking about the PISA report and the OECD. They were talking about the educational system and what we're looking to do with the educational system using the Compass framework. And they say, I'm going to see if I can find the quote. I probably won't be able to find it because it's well in the weeds right now. But it's something along the lines of explain. Oh, actually, look at that. I'm really good at organizing my quotes. The paradigm has shifted so that the paradigm has shifted so that the environment is viewed as a larger ecological system. That's written in the PISA report, which makes me think, okay, are they moving towards eco-psych, or is that just a coincidence that they're talking about ecological systems and environments?
I hope they are moving towards ecopsych.
That's
Very
certainly the
lovely.
narrative I'm going to spin.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just loving the ed psych or ed science research in eco psych, and I will be bringing more eco psych into the videos moving forward. So that's just, yeah, it will be happening. What about you with your eco psych journey? It sounds like you've spoken with a couple of people about it. How's your don't know research going? It's not research, but your understanding of the theories, the ideas and
I
stuff.
I think I have an understanding, but I do not have the expertise to share my understanding. If that kind of like I'm lacking that expertise.
You can share it. You mean you can't share it to the level at which you would want to share it?
Yes, yeah, like to the level that I want, because there's a lot of misconceptions that I think are due to my lack of expertise in my explanation. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's not quite what I mean. And that is one of the big reasons I want to talk a lot more about like ecopsych, because I have like a grasp of it from my perspective, and like I have a foundation, I suppose, but sharing that outside of my own like thought is I don't have the expertise that matches what I know.
So how would you explain eco psych to someone? Like what would you say? What would you explain? Obviously, you must have given an answer to the person that asked about the book.
I did. Shit. But I don't know whether it was shit. I just think there were so many. It basically, it is an alternative approach to cognitive psychology that talks about the environment and the relationship between a person and the environment. I used a person and the environment. And I think that's even a better version of what I actually said. Um, because now I'm already thinking about it, and I've been thinking about it a lot. It was like my excuse, half past 10, 11 o'clock at night when I was ill. Well done. Why did I decide to do that? But yeah,
Uh,
that is how I would explain it if someone asked now and I had 5 minutes to think instead of just like
so when they say, what does that mean? How do you respond?
how long you got?
Like, I'm just curious where you start. Like, do you start from
That's the
perception?
problem.
Do you start from
I I
action?
I
Like,
usually start from like the relationships between perception and action. That's that I go right back to like
okay.
relationship, and I don't like that.
Because obviously we had that conversation with the ladies in the airport. I say
Yeah,
we had the conversation. I had the
you did.
conversation that you were sitting in.
Yes, yes. And there is also like a confidence issue for me. And I think that is also a part of it, which I will figure out as I always do. Um, and so I can't remember that conversation. I wish I could, but I cannot right now. Um, I don't know. And I think it will be different for every person. I would find something that I could link with them.
Well,
And
you need to be
then,
able to resonate with what it is that
yeah,
they're talking about.
yeah. So
It's the same with every element of expertise, though. We
yeah,
don't have stable movements. Like the human isn't stable. There is variation everywhere. Repetition without repetition, Bernstein's principles. So when you're explaining whatever it is, there's going to be variation. You can't have something that's stable. So it's obviously finding resonance with the people that you're talking to in that collective environment. So
and
I
yeah,
guess
it was very much as I was discussing it, I didn't know the people I was talking to, and so that made it quite difficult in a way,
why not just ask them?
because that would be way too simple. And that I think is one of the things that I'm like working on for me is just to, when I'm not sure, just ask a question. Because that is
That's what
something
you tell your son, though, you hypocrite.
exactly. I recognize myself in my son, and I'm like, yeah, good point. I just jumped to the end. Now, vast majority of this time, I'm right. However, I'm not always. And I think that's kind of what my shift is. It's remaining curious. If I go back to my own like
Oh,
philosophy of practice, it's the curiosity element and just remaining curious rather than jumping to a conclusion, which is obviously what I will do anyway, but I can still remain curious.
so how do you practice that?
Ask questions, be intrigued, be interested,
Not,
write.
not as in like the theories, in like actual practice. Because when we talk about eco psych, obviously there is theoretical understanding, but then there's practical understanding because perception and action are coupled, blah blah blah, all the eco psych jargon stuff. So how do you practice? Are you going to be like blocked practice? Are you going to write down rote repetition? This is what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to say. Or are you actually going to do something that would be more encompassing to the constraints-led approach to developing skills?
I just do repetition,
Okay.
obviously, you know,
You're gonna do a Bart Simpson, write the same sentence on the board.
yeah, yeah, Bart Simpson, memorize flashcards, you know,
Anki, yeah,
explain,
yeah.
explain it to a 3-year-old,
Shut up. Eco psych is where you put the body and the brain together. Sorry, what? What are you talking about? Oh, it's the same sort of thing as embedded cognition and embodied. No, they're not. No, they're not. Yeah, but a 3-year-old understands it. It doesn't matter if a 3-year-old understands it. That's not right. Feynman technique.
I just, you're welcome. Enjoy that triggering.
Yeah, yeah. What's actually mildly amusing is I don't know why, and I haven't got to this part of the book, but in Ali's book, he talks about the protege effect, which is basically the Feynman technique, but put into effect, because it's explaining the expert explaining something to someone else as a protege. Um,
One of the
so
things I'm definitely that this is very much related, and I will create the connection in a minute. I've really got to start reading books I really don't like because I just hear that and I'm like, I knew when I saw him launch, I'm not buying it. Sorry.
yeah, I had already got it on pre-order for when I helped him out with it, so. No, I don't have any credits, but I didn't help him that much with it. I helped him enough for me to remember, but not enough for me to say that I contributed. And to be honest, I wouldn't want to say that I contributed because I don't know how much I would actually believe in what he's written because I don't know the book.
Yeah, it's interesting how much for me I read less of. Not, I don't actually read less. I read more, but how much less I read of the kind of pop. I suppose it is the pop psych books, and I'm just like, oh, this is too simplified.
But that's where the best conversations come from. Like when you think about Malcolm Gladwell, right? Outliers, the Outliers
Mm,
book of 10,000 hours. The book itself isn't bad. The book itself covers a lot of science and a lot of the education of science that I got taught at university. But when it comes to those with expertise in the field, it's awful. But if you don't have the expertise, it's not awful. And Malcolm Gladwell, even though I say the book is awful when you have expertise, Malcolm Gladwell isn't awful. Him as an author isn't awful. It's the way the book is written. So he has expertise that goes beyond what he wrote in the book. So when I say the book is awful from someone that has expertise in the 10,000 hours and understands the nuance, I'm not saying Malcolm Gladwell is awful. That's a jump. That's a step people make. What I am saying is the ideas that he puts across in the book are oversimplified for people with this level of expertise, which means you need to add in context, which I feel is the same with the book, Feel Good Productivity. The book itself, the ideas pushed itself, I imagine from what I've read so far, are oversimplified for those that have expertise in this field. And Ali himself will probably admit that there are points made in the book that he doesn't have that much expertise in, so he's writing as a novice trying to explain to other people, which is where him as an author is developing and moving forwards, and that's where we need to position ourselves when reading books. We go, okay, this is where they were at this point in time, so when you read a book that you would disagree with, you then need to be able to argue your point as to why you disagree with it. And the author may agree with your with your argument, with your point, but that's what they were thinking at that time when they wrote the book. And of course, publishers and editors also rephrase things, which can cloud the explanation a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is why I read the books that I do. I read the books that I do because either I fundamentally agree with what it is that they're talking about and I want to understand their sources better, textbooks, or I likely disagree with the points that they're making because of the nuanced understanding I have in my own interpretations and experiences. So I want to understand their arguments so I can better build up my own arguments or potentially change my mind. That doesn't happen often. And that's not me being stubborn. That's not me being like, egotistical or biased. That's me being, I would argue, confident in the research that I've done to create my formulated opinions. I don't hold many opinions that are flimsy, which is why I don't change my mind often. It's a pain in the ass if you want to have an argument with me, because I can quite happily cite various conversations, discussions, arguments, studies, points of view that people struggle with, and people hate arguing with people that know their stuff.
And one thing that I found as I was exploring cog I'm gonna call it cog now.
Forget cognitive psychology, it's just cog.
Yeah, well, I was exploring the cog, but I was exploring cog psych. There was always, it wasn't realistic, which is me trying to avoid saying it wasn't ecologically valid, but that is what I mean. So why don't I just say that? It wasn't ecologically valid. And so as I was having it, oh, but what about this situation? But oh, well, this is a like caveat. Oh, well, this is a different interpret. But as I've been like exploring the world of ecopsych, it's like, yeah, cool, this is explained by this. And yes, this doesn't make sense. But this is why. And so when I'm having these discussions, and like I am noticing, even in my slightly lesser expertise, it is interesting how the arguments that I have are far more like there is reasons or an explanation for multiple like experiences because it's built from that. And even as I read books I disagree with, I'm like, oh, I see this. But if you look at it like this, here is an ecological approach to what you just said. That also removes a bunch of assumptions that you made.
But that's it. That's what the ecological approach does. Even though the explanations arguably are the same thing, you could argue that an explanation through an ecopsych and a cogpsych lens to a movement result in the same thing. It's the explanation and the how, the process of, that is different. If you take a snapshot, a snapshot, movement, or example, ecopsych and cogpsych would be able to explain them very, very similar. But when you try and apply that explanation outside of that snapshot example, cogpsych, you need to go, well, this nuance, this piece of information, this caveat, we're now going to change this theory to that theory. Like, you have to do a lot of work to then explain the next situation, whereas
Yeah.
the ecopsych is really the same sort of explanation. Right?
Mm.
You just add a different constraint,
Mm.
or the person has attuned to a different affordance.
Mm. And I'm
It's
just
not
like,
a oh, we now need the false consensus effect instead of the generation effect. No, forget all that rubbish.
it's interesting because I find myself repeating myself with the same kind of phrases.
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah, it's because of this, and, Cuban this and this and this. It's like, oh, but it's actually, albeit complicated language, it is super freaking simple.
I don't know whether you've heard this analogy, but some people talk about climbing a hill, and the sunk cost fallacy is once you climb the hill, you don't want to go back down the hill. I feel like that's where a lot of people are at with cogpsych, is we've gone so far up this hill
Yes.
that we don't
Yeah.
want to come back down it and then go back up another hill. So
Mm.
they're just sunk cost fallacy sort of thing. They're stuck trying to get to the top of the hill, but they can't see the top of the hill, and they're in the clouds and trying to figure out where they're going. But all the people on the ecopsych are above the clouds, over on the side over there, but they've had to come all the way down, go all the way back up again. That's a lot of effort. That's a lot of time investment, which is understanding the jargon, trying to grapple with this different interpretation of what perception means, what action means, what language and communications are, what visual arrays are, and all this other resonance jargon. Like,
And
all of that is a lot.
it's jargony, jargon.
Yeah.
Jargon. It's tough to get through.
Yeah, especially when you bring in dynamical systems and complex systems and all the math behind it, 1 1 1 1 1,
And
bivariance.
dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, 5 dot, 7 dot, 22 dot, snap
Exactly.
crack dot.
Oh yeah. And snack crackle pop pop is actually like a thing.
I
It's not him just saying it. Uh,
know that.
So you really do have to really come down the mountain and go back up another one, which a lot of people don't want to do, which is why it's so hard to get people to follow the approach. And some people try and build a bridge across cogpsych and ecopsych. It really doesn't work. And that to me is where the communication between the the two fields are so drastically different. So when you go to explain the argument, if you're on an ecopsych, you're sitting there going, "Oh, why are you doing that dumb thing? You're going round and round in circles over here, not really
Mm.
finding an answer. And I'm over here just giving you an explanation." No, it doesn't have all of the finite specific pieces of information that you want for that context, because you can't. Because there is variance in experience.
Yeah.
And that is one of the assumptions that ecopsych holds that is fundamental to the approach, which cogpsych doesn't hold. And that is where the people on the bridge stand on the bridge going, well, there's no plank here to follow because cogpsych follows this plank, but ecopsych doesn't have that plank. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. And that's where the people on the bridge just get stuck, because they're so ingrained in the philosophy that is down the mountain that they haven't gone down. I'm
And
really
it's so
loving this
interesting.
analogy.
The thing I find fascinating with this is that people know that there is variance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just like, yes, things are variable, but let me just stick to this thing that assumes there's no variance. And I'm like, why? But, 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 but why? And I don't, maybe it's just because I have gained expertise,
It
but it's
was
not hard.
non-linear multi-causality, Jonathan. Come
I
on.
know.
Come on.
I
Get your jargon, get your dictionary out.
I know, but it's like it's so simple in its complexity. Like, because I don't have to have an explanation for all of these complex terms, because
That's
there are
such an
like,
eco-psych thing. It's so simple in its complexity.
I know, because it is. And I did actually say that in the set. It's like, okay, someone was asking, oh, I want to like optimize and simplify stuff. And I'm like, right, let me get settled in. And I suggested, so this might not be a book. That sounds like a book you want to read. Because
And
the
it
book is
probably isn't.
because the book is called Complexity, which sounds in complete contradiction to what you want to read. However, read it.
And I don't think a lot of people. This comes back to one of the assumptions that was made on the BBC education docu-film thing about AI education. The teacher said something along the lines of, "We don't question, do we?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we do. Everyone questions. Everyone is curious, and everyone wants to learn. It's whether they can be asked to do the research to go learn the thing. Most people can't, partly because of the way they've been brought up and been food-fed answers by teachers that don't think that we question, do we, stupid teacher? Um, but also, it takes work, it takes effort, and humans, animals in general, organisms, don't like expending effort if they don't need to. That's not a human thing. That's an organism thing.
Yeah.
Like the sun isn't going to like expend all of its energy at once because it's inefficient. Why would it do that?
Which I think kind of links back to going all the way around to the Substack.
Hmm.
I realize that the stuff that I want to talk about, it's putting it out in the environment that I'm in. It's providing, like, putting it into the environment that I'm in with people who are interested. Just have a slight curiosity, because that's all that's needed. It's just a little bit of curiosity. And I have been very much, I want to make content and I want to create content and I want to create content. I'm not a content creator. I don't want to do that. And I've been very resistant in case that wasn't really obvious. I don't know. I keep it subtle, you know.
Um,
Uh, and it was, I think, hearing what you were saying about that, I was like, yeah, no, I'm just putting stuff in the environment. Okay, cool. Because that's what it is. It's just the more we talk about it and relate it back to stuff that is interesting and has the correct, not the correct, the right little attractors to pull people in of like
appropriate.
appropriate, thank
You,
you,
you you need to get in your Scrabble game, build up that vocabulary.
appropriate attractors. I like that because it's an iteration and it makes me feel nice. Um, it's like cultivating curiosity was a word that came into my head.
Term, yes.
I love it. I just love it.
It's a term because there's two words there, just saying.
Yeah, it's all one word for me. I know. Cultivating curiosity because
Mm.
kind of, I like it.
So
Anyway,
yeah.
yeah, go on.
I was going to say I have a question, but you finish off what you were saying.
Well,
I've forgotten now.
yeah.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. My question, which is related to what we're talking about, is about the.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Oh,
know, I know.
it's related.
Because I asked this in a Discord server yesterday, which I don't think you're in the Discord server, but I will give you the name of the server because there is a person that listens to this that is in the Discord server, and they suggested it to me. I'm stalling because I'm trying to find the Discord server name.
I love it. I have started exploring more Discord servers. I need to get rid of some of my Discord servers because I have so much that I go in there and I'm just overwhelmed with all of the choices. So I need to constrain my
Yeah,
my
so I
Discord environment.
I can't actually see the full name of it, which is why I was delaying because the name is too long for the little side handle showy thing. But it
Cool.
starts with ecological dynamics for submission. Dot dot dot. Um, and I think it's submission grappling because that's what it's got in the image. But essentially, it's martial arts. It's those inside of martial arts: grappling, karate, judo.
I think I read a post. I think it was a comment on one of our
Yeah,
podcast videos.
yeah,
That's where it's come from, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes. Hello, people in there if you're watching slash listening. And I posed a question in
Also,
there.
sorry for taking so long to put the podcast up. Like,
I asked a question in there and I got a response, and we were sort of going backwards and forwards a little bit in there about the future eco psych video essay that I'm planning, but it's like 4 videos in future. So it'll probably be like a March video that shows you how much I think about these videos before they actually come out. Uh, and I want to ask you this question because obviously it's part of what you're doing. How would you introduce people to eco psych? When I say people, I'm talking about educators that are familiar with learning psychology, whether that's ecological psychology, cognitive psychology, or just learning science in general, and isn't familiar with working memory and all the rest. Maybe just teachers or educators that are on YouTube, like Gotham Chess, for example. He's probably not in the educational science literature, but he teaches chess, air quote marks, online. So maybe an educator online or a teacher or someone, a parent that wants to help with their child, or a person in business that wants to help employees be functional. Like,
I have had a number of business owners and coaches, I use that word and term,
mm,
exceptionally lightly.
yep. Coach should be a professional term. It's not. It's annoying.
I don't even know what to call what is called
Facilitators.
coaches. Yes. Facilitators and teachers, I think, probably are the bet. Yeah. Anyway, the facilitators, or as they call themselves, coaches, I've been thinking that a lot of them have come to me with questions. And so, like, as I was watching ecological dynamics for submission grappling, I'm like, ecological dynamics for business.
Mm.
Cool. That'd be interesting. Because
Where?
another thing that, sorry, I'm going in multiple places at
Yeah, yeah,
once.
yeah. I'm keeping
What?
track. All the bifurcations.
Oh, the bifurcations. Oh dear. This is what happens when we don't talk for weeks.
Yeah. You see, my working memory capacity couldn't hold. It didn't have the. It didn't have. Well, it was over limited by the amount of
Mm,
information that I was gathering. So I need to remember from something that doesn't exist in hallucinations
mm,
to
mm.
discuss with you. You see.
And you have a schema to do that.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. It's all schemed out in my brain that's chunked the information with the
Mm,
neuron
mm,
connections.
mm, mm.
Yeah. Anyway, what were you saying? And this is where I go. I don't know. I forgot.
I do remember. Um, I said it. No, I do remember. One of the things that I want to do is have community. Like that is something that I want to focus on this year, which I have the D&D part as I've been what?
I'm listening. I
Cool.
mean, I've got headphones on, so getting closer doesn't do anything. But
I know.
I'm,
I
I'm
was like,
yeah, I'm listening. The thing is, the camera's over there and the screen's over there, so I'm not even looking in the.
it's
So I can't even see what you're doing. Yeah, it's like
uh, is to start thinking about. So I have been very much enjoying the D&D stuff and having that environment. And I would like to foster that environment or be part of environments that are like that, but not necessarily for D&D, but for really interesting conversations like this.
and we'll circle back to my question. Communities is what I was thinking about during the sort of the Christmas week, the week between Christmas and New Year that no one knows what to do with. Uh, during that week, I was thinking about communities and what I'm doing, what other people are doing, and I made a decision in that I don't want. So I was live streaming before Christmas. I'm not going to live stream, not because I don't want to, but I think it would be more beneficial to join other communities than starting new ones because there are so many communities already that it's split across loads of places. The Discord that I have makes sense because all of the different channels that I have go into the Discord and I can answer all of the questions there.
I noticed the rename.
Yes. Yes. Um, but the engaging in communities bit, I'd much rather, I mean, I'm in a lot of Discord servers. I would say
Are you?
yeah, but I would say I'm only active in 3 or 4. My one, obviously, then the Morgan server because I'm a moderator, but there's not much to do in there. The Obsidian one, again, there's not much to do in there. And then a couple of other what I would class as community servers, but there's not many conversations in them. However, the ecological dynamics server that I joined recently, the grappling one that we mentioned earlier, those are the conversations I'm like, yes, I want those, because the other servers that I'm in are very political.
Mm.
And I don't like the political conversation when it's so heavily biased to a country's policies. Because I don't want to be talking about policies. I want to be talking about the theories, the actions, the what you can do things, not the, oh, we can't make this political decision, or we can't add this policy because all of these people disagree with this and all of those people disagree with that, and this money needs to go here and that might. I don't care about all of that sort of stuff. It's interesting to discuss, yes, but I would much rather talk about what we could actually do rather than how we put that policy into place in that specific system. Because if I'm not in that system, I don't care. Like, sorry, Americans, I don't care about your education system when it comes to adding policies in, because some of your policies are silly. um, and some of the policies in the English system as well are silly. But the
Or
English,
bias.
yeah, but the English system is one I'm in, so I care more about it. So when I'm talking with other people, I want it to be more abstract, so I'm not tied down to I don't understand how the American political system works, so I don't really know how to contribute to this conversation, sort of thing. Which is why the ecodynamics Discord is where I feel like I may spend a little bit more time in, probably on the
And I
theory
might
side.
just join.
Yeah, oh yeah, probably more on the theory side rather than the grappling and the stuff. But it does beg the question: how do you introduce people into this field? Which like goes back to my question that we sort of diverted from. How would you? What if you were to make a video on YouTube, a video essay on YouTube, as me? Like if you were me, trying to introduce educators, teachers, and stuff into ecological dynamics, which is a question that I've asked in the server. So if you're in the server, please contribute to the thread. How would you go about doing it? Because that's the conversation that I want to have over the next couple of weeks while I sort of semi-plan out what I'm going to do for the video. How would you do it? What would you do? Where would you start? What would you go with? What would you include? What wouldn't you include? I wouldn't start with complex dynamic systems, we need to look at variance and
No.
I know that's dumb.
I Are you asking this question?
Yeah,
I think I would always go with the relationship between perception and action. Obviously not to explain it exactly like that. I'm just saying this is shorthand for us. I think I would start there.
that's like saying start with this textbook, not that textbook.
Exactly. Duh. Just start with textbook. It's fine.
Great. Yeah, which 4-hour lecture shall I start with? Because I mean, the Introduction to Ecological Psychology does a nice job at explaining ecological psychology and goes through a logical view. But it's a book. It's a textbook. And the book is written for people that are going to read it. Like, duh. Whereas a YouTube video, if it's going to perform well, this is me knowing YouTube, can't be pitched at experts because only the experts are going to read it, or in YouTube's case, watch it. So there needs to be something that the non-expert can grapple with. Obviously, I mentioned earlier having a YouTube creator being a storyteller or some famous person being a storyteller. So where I'm leaning at the moment is trying to find a narrative or story that I can tell that is somewhat related to popular faces. Like taking a football manager or a baseball manager or a hockey coach or some big personality person that's adopted ecopsych, maybe as an intro, like Pep Guardiola, for example. Put Pep Guardiola on the thumbnail. Like, how would I? This is like the YouTuber game in the ecopsych world. Rob Gray, great content. If you're not inside of ecopsych, well over your head.
Mm.
A lot of the other podcasts that talk about ecopsych, again, they assume you understand this sort of stuff. And even my video that I've got on my educational science channel at the moment starts with an assumption that you're familiar with James Gibson. Most
Yeah.
people aren't familiar with that, which is why it doesn't perform as well as the other videos. So as a follow-up to that James Gibson video, the Introduction to Ecological Psychology, how do I package the video for someone that isn't in ecopsych? I can't put my own face on it because people don't know me.
Mm.
I can
Don't
envisage
know.
in a couple of years' time, my face would be sort of like Rob's face if the videos do well, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can see that happening. Yes, it could sound egotistical, but as someone that's got videos on YouTube with thousands of views, like Rob Gray, I feel like that could be something that's possible.
I suppose if this podcast took off, because we talk from a perspective of, I suppose, productivity and organization and that, well, we did, but kind of don't, but do.
We talk about ecological psychology in real life. We have variants within episodes.
Yeah.
So if anyone's interested in the topics that we experience, then they'll come to the podcast. But it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with ecopsych or with the app or the thing that we happen to be talking about, it's very difficult to jump into this podcast.
Mm.
So how would you push it?
From my
Yeah, like how would you start the video? Would you where would you start the video? Would you say perception and action, but what?
yeah, I don't know.
Visual perception, action with behavior in humans,
I
behavior
think
in
I would
groups?
take, I think from if it was me doing it for like in a business sense of my work and what I'm interested in with like coaching and business design, like building a business from an ecological perspective, I would take a business owner who uses those concepts but don't realize they're using them. And I know of a couple of business, one that is bigger in the space who I work for, hence why I work for her, because she's interesting and seeing behind the scenes of how she operates is interesting for me. I think I would go from that direction. I would use a business owner who follows, and a lot of them identify as neurodiverse or ADHD. So I think I would go from that angle because in the business, like the space that I inhabit right now, the environment that I'm in, everyone is attracted to ADHD and autism and building businesses around those conditions. So I think that's where I would start. I think.
Idea. What if we ask inside the Discord server for people to come on next week to discuss this?
Idea. I like it.
Okay, I was gonna say yes, it's an idea. It's a good one or a bad one. Yeah, because I feel like that could be an interesting conversation to have. Like, how do you introduce ecological dynamics, ecological psychology, and the approach in general to people that aren't in it? And I think the people that are in it would probably have the best insight into how to introduce it.
And we're literally I'm just there going, oh right, we're literally using the ecological approach in this conversation because we're quite literally going, okay, what is the constraints we need to introduce it to? And as the more you are exposed to it, or the more
Resonant.
resonance to the whole topic. Oh, we have action items, by the way, Danny.
Yeah, I've been ignoring Otter the entire time. It keeps throwing up shit, and I'm
I
like,
know,
go away.
go away. Yeah.
We just want to talk.
Yeah, exactly. When do we have to have action items? Why does everything have to conclude? Anyway, besides, does anything conclude? No, we won't go there. No,
Does anything start?
no. We can go down. That's another one to play with.
That's a philosophy for another conversation.
Yeah, that's it will be. It relates quite nicely to one of the other things I was writing is as I was going through writing that piece, I just had to put the thing about Maslow in there. I don't remember whether I kept it or whether I removed it. I don't remember now. But there was something that I put in there of like, like Maslow's. Everyone assumes that Maslow's hierarchy, Maslow's triangle and the hierarchy of
Hierarchy
needs
of needs.
that Maslow didn't even put into a triangle and it was completely arbitrary nonsense BS. And I was like, but that's a thing for another time.
In in the Pisa video, there are lots of bits where I'm like, I could talk about this for an hour. I could talk about this for an hour. I could talk about this for an hour, but obviously I don't want to. And the more I write, the more I recognize so during my undergraduate degree, Jim, my head of course, during the lectures would repeatedly go, and I could do a degree on this, and I could do a degree on this. And I always thought he was joking. But now that I'm in this like field of research, I could do a degree on that. I could do a degree on that. I'm sitting here going, I could do an entire 2-3 hour discussion about just that one thing that I've mentioned. Hence, like freaking 1,000-page textbooks on stuff. But yeah, so I feel like next week we'll try and have a discussion about how you introduce ecological dynamics and ecological psychology to newer learners. Maybe we'll turn this into a bit of a round table of eco-psych people. I mean, that's what we intended on doing after Germany, but we sort of diverted all over the place.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2024 plans, talk more about ecological psychology in a theoretical sense.
Theoretical.
Well, yeah, because ecological psychology is a philosophical approach.
Cool.
When you apply ecological psychology, it becomes the constraints-led approach.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
And we'll probably be talking about the constraints-led approach, of course, and differential learning and direct learning and all the rest of the sciencey stuff. But Bernstein, uh,
Woohoo!
yeah, but yeah, I think that nicely closes out our really pre-scripted conversation with no variance because there's only one way to do podcast
Of course,
episode of the year.
Yeah.
Right. Talk to you all next week.
Bye.